The first sound is not the clink of silver, but the hush of it, coins sliding through gloved fingers in a candlelit chamber beneath the Guildhall. Tallow smoke coils upward, staining the beams the color of old bruises. Outside, winter rain strikes the cobbles of a northern market town, washing horse dung and wilted cabbage leaves into the gutters. The gutters run like veins. The rain carries away what rots in the open. But beneath the floorboards, in rooms where no rain can reach, something else begins to decay. A scale trembles on a wooden table scarred by years of quiet arithmetic. A weight is shifted, a breath is held, a prayer is whispered, not to God, but to prophet. The silver does not sing when it lands. It sighs. They say the coins are cursed because they do not ring true. But curses are easier to believe than hands with knives. Edges are shaved by careful blades, slivers of brightness slipping into dark aprons. Faces, kings, saints, lions rampant are clipped and melted into secret ingots hidden beneath hearthstones and floorboards. The fire consumes their images without protest. Authority turns to liquid and is poured into molds that carry no crest, no oath. Honest men feel it first in their palms. A baker rising before matins presses a silver penny into the miller's hand and senses its lightness as if something essential has fled. A sack of rye costs more than it did at Michaelmas. The oven burns hotter, but the loaves shrink. He does not know whom to blame. He stares at the coin as though it might confess. A widow who sells beeswax candles in the square watches customers weigh her payment twice, suspicion spreading like rot in damp timber. Once, coins were trust made metal. Now they are questions. The king's face is stamped upon each silver penny, his authority impressed in Latin letters few villagers can read. The crown sits proud above his brow. The cross behind his head promises order, divine favor, protection from chaos. But beneath that sacred image thrives a quieter economy, one without banners, without hymns. Moneyers are bribed to alloy silver with base tin. A fraction here, a whisper there. Tax collectors accept underweight coin in exchange for silence thick as velvet. Lombard lenders extend credit at interest murmured through confession screens, numbers traded like secrets. The abbey cellarer, sworn to guard tithe grain against rats and damp, begins trading in foreign deniers brought by Flemish cloth merchants. He tells himself it is for the good of the abbey, for repairs, for candles, for God. But silver mixed with tin is not a sin that announces itself with thunder. It seeps. In the tavern, tankards of small ale are paid for with coins that no longer carry trust. The innkeeper bites them out of habit. His teeth find softness where hardness once answered. He spits into the hearth and says nothing. The blacksmith hammers horseshoes by firelight, sparks rising like brief stars. He hears rumors of hangings in York, clippers caught with shears tucked into their boots, fingers stained with treachery. Their bodies swing as warnings, iron collars around their necks, tongues black with winter air. And still the coins move. They pass through bread ovens and bridal dowries, through coffers bound for crusade levies. They rattle in alms bowls and clatter on gaming tables, each one thinner than the last, each one lighter. By Candlemas, hunger has a sound. It is not loud. It is the scrape of empty bowls. It is the slow, measured breathing of a mother who has given her portion to her child. It is the argument between husband and wife over whether to accept copper tokens issued by the manor steward, tokens redeemable, he promises, at harvest. Harvest feels like a rumor. In the market square, a debtor is dragged to the pillory. His wrists are locked into wood that smells of old rain and older shame. The bell tolls. The sound spreads outward, touching every ear. He insists the coins he paid were good enough yesterday. He swears by the saints. No one meets his eyes. The silence around him is thicker than chains. The curse, they whisper, is in the metal. But the curse is not in the silver. It lives in the silence between transactions, in the widening crack between face and value, in the small lie told and swallowed. It lives in the glance a merchant gives another when no one is watching, in the weight of a scale adjusted by the smallest breath. Trust is the true currency, and trust is bleeding out, drop by unseen drop. When frost forms along the cathedral's stone gargoyles, their mouths freeze open as if mid-cry. Snow gathers in the carved hollows of their eyes. In the square below, a single clipped coin lies half buried in white. It is light as a lie, heavy as a kingdom's failing faith. And somewhere beyond the town walls, riders move through the night. The king has heard. In a hall far from the market's mud and smoke, torches burn against tapestries depicting battles long won. The court murmurs like a restless sea. A royal treasurer kneels, his fingers trembling as he presents a purse of silver. The king pours the coins onto a table of oak. They scatter. Some ring sharp. Others thud, dull and embarrassed. He does not need to read the Latin on their faces. He hears the difference. "This is my image," he says softly, lifting one between thumb and forefinger. "And yet it is not my will." His voice does not rise. It does not need to. Authority, once questioned, is like a cracked bell. It may still sound, but never the same. Orders are given in low tones. Edicts drafted. New dies prepared. The threat of mutilation hangs over any moneyer caught in deceit. Fingers for clipping. Ears for silence. A body broken so the realm may believe again. But punishment is spectacle. It can frighten hands. It cannot mend hearts. In the north, the baker closes his shop earlier each evening. He stares at the last loaf cooling on the board, wondering if tomorrow it will be smaller still. The widow counts her candles and prays they will sell before the wax grows soft in spring heat. The blacksmith hears the echo of the gallows in every strike of his hammer. And beneath the guild hall, in chambers that smell of tallow and fear, another scale trembles. The men who shave silver do not think of kingdoms. They think of winter boots for their children, of debts owed to harsher men, of the thin line between survival and disgrace. They tell themselves the king will never notice a sliver here, a shaving there, but kingdoms are not undone by storms alone. They unravel in the quiet. As Lent approaches, ash is pressed upon brows. Remember that you are dust, the priest intones. Dust to dust, metal to metal, faces stamped and melted. The people bow their heads, and in that bowed silence lies a question none dare speak aloud. If the king's image can be thinned, can his power? If silver can be hollowed, what of oaths? Snow begins to melt. The gutters run again. The clipped coin in the square sinks deeper into slush, disappearing from sight. Yet its absence remains, a memory of lightness in the hand. And beyond the thawing fields, where banners snap in a colder wind, greater levies are being counted, greater debts demanded. The realm's hunger stretches beyond bread now, toward war, toward glory, toward a promise written in blood and sealed with silver. But when silver itself cannot be trusted, what then carries a kingdom forward? In the hush before dawn, as the first market bell waits to be struck, the answer does not come in the ring of coin. It comes in the uneasy stillness of men who sense that something fundamental has shifted. The metal was never cursed. It was the silence that rotted it. And in that silence, beneath frost-bitten gargoyles and wavering torchlight, the true reckoning begins. Before dawn, the forest breathes in a low mist, and a cart creaks along a narrow road cut between black pines. Its wheels are bound in rawhide to soften the sound, so that even the earth is spared the truth of its passing. A tarred lantern swings from its side, its amber light trembling across the trunks like a guilty conscience. The mule's hooves press into frost-hardened mud. The driver keeps his head low beneath a woolen hood, murmuring in Occitan to calm the animal, as though words might steady more than nerves. Beneath the fleeces stacked in the cart, innocent smelling of lanolin and smoke, small leather purses lie stitched shut with gut thread. They are swollen with coins forbidden by decree, silver stamped with a king's promise, and yet tainted by doubt. When the bell of a distant priory tolls prime, Thin and cold across the valley, the driver crosses himself. Not for God's blessing on the journey, but for silence. The road winds down toward villages scattered across the Pyrenees, stone houses clinging to slopes like stubborn prayers. Here, rumor has taken root like ivy in cracked mortar. They say the king's treasury is empty. They say new coin has been struck with less silver than before. The edges look the same. The saints' halos remain bright. But the weight in the hand betrays a subtle theft, as if something sacred has been breathed out of the metal. Markets falter. In the square of a mountain town, shepherds in rough cloaks stand beside their flocks, crooks planted in the mud. They demand payment in salt blocks or in lambs rather than in coin. Salt can be tasted, lambs can be counted. Silver now must be doubted. Bakers refuse to break loaves without weighing each penny on brass scales inherited from their fathers. The scales are polished by generations of fingers, their balance once unquestioned. Now they tremble with suspicion. A woman buying barley flour feels the eyes of the crowd upon her as the baker turns her coins over, testing their edge with a thumbnail. The smallest shaving, the faintest unevenness is enough to halt the exchange. Bread is not only food, it is dignity. And dignity, like silver, is thinning. So a hidden economy blooms like mold in a damp cellar. In narrow lanes heavy with the scent of wood smoke and tanned hides, Jewish moneylenders sit behind sturdy tables, already burdened by royal tallages and old suspicion. They become reluctant custodians of trust. Their fingers are deft and careful, biting coins lightly, tapping them against stone. The sound must be clear, sharp, a ring that carries conviction. If it dulls, they set the coin aside, their brows knitting in quiet despair. They did not ask to be guardians of honesty, yet honesty has fled elsewhere. Guildmasters retreat into their halls, doors carved with symbols of craft and pride. Within those timbered rooms, they issue private tokens redeemable only among their own. A carpenter's mark burned into a wooden disc, a weaver's seal pressed into clay. Value shrinks inward, no longer spanning kingdoms, but clinging to familiar walls. In Carcassonne, a mason stands atop a scaffold, his hands white with lime dust. He accepts payment not in coin, but in carved stone blocks, storing value in cathedral walls that rise toward a pale sky. Stone does not lie, he mutters, running his palm along a newly set arch. The cathedral grows heavier with each block, as if absorbing the weight silver has lost. The church thunders against usury from pulpits thick with incense. Priests speak of sin that multiplies like vermin. Gold breeds gold, they warn, and greed breeds damnation. Yet behind monastery doors, bishops negotiate loans to fund pilgrimages and fortifications. Their rings glint in candlelight as they press seals into wax. Holiness must be maintained. Walls must be repaired. Even sanctity requires coin. Knights return from campaign in Iran, armor dulled by dust and sweat. They bring foreign dinars stamped with unfamiliar script, crescents and flowing lines that speak of distant mints and purer silver. These coins circulate in secret, prized for their weight. A tavern keeper slips one into a hidden pouch beneath his tunic, trusting the foreign more than his own king's face. The curse spreads beyond markets. It seeps into marriages and baptisms. Douris shrink like wool left too long in rain. A cooper counts his savings for his daughter's wedding and finds them wanting. He stares at the stack of pennies, their edges uneven, their faces proud but hollow. He feels shame rise in his throat, not because he has failed in love, but because love now has a price measured in suspicion. Apprentices are dismissed when masters can no longer afford bread for extra mouths. A boy who once dreamed of learning the art of goldsmithing is sent back to his father's field, hands blistering under a plow instead of shaping beauty. Hope narrows. A tanner's daughter, once promised to a cooper, is sent instead to serve in a convent kitchen. Her hair is braided tightly as she leaves her home. She carries no dowry, only a bundle of clothes and the memory of a promise dissolved by numbers, inked in a ledger stained with grease. In the convent, she scrubs pots in silence, steam rising around her like a question no one answers. The forest cart reaches the edge of a town at twilight. The driver hesitates, scanning the shadows. Royal agents have begun to move through these valleys, their writs sealed in green wax. They accuse townsfolk of hoarding, of withholding silver from the king's grasp. Doors are broken. Chests overturned. Straw mattresses ripped open with blades searching for hidden glints. One night, the agents arrive unannounced in a village square. Torches flare. Children cry out as boots pound on wooden doors. A cooper's chest is dragged into the street, its contents scattered across mud. Coins spill like seeds. The agents weigh them, count them, frown. Hoarding, one declares. The word hangs heavier than iron. The forest cart is found abandoned days later along the road, its mule wandering loose. Rain has soaked the fleeces. The sacks are slashed open, perhaps by thieves, perhaps by panic. Coins lie scattered in the mud, indistinguishable from stones. Their faces are obscured by filth. Authority sinks into earth without ceremony. By the time cathedral bells ring for vespers, the sound carries not peace but unease. The notes drift over rooftops, over fields stripped for winter. Trust itself has become contraband, hidden as carefully as silver once was. Neighbors eye one another across fences. Transactions are hushed. Even alms given to the poor are weighed twice. In a small monastery perched on a ridge above the valley, a monk kneels in a cellar lit by a single taper. He lifts a clay jar from beneath loose stones. Inside rests a hoard of unshaved silver, bright, untouched, the edges crisp as morning frost. He runs his fingers through the coins, their weight solid and reassuring. He does not intend greed. He intends preservation. For a better day, he whispers, as if speaking to the future. Above him, wind presses against the monastery walls, rattling shutters. The valley below lies in shadow, villages flickering with sparse candlelight. Somewhere, a woman counts her dwindling dowry. Somewhere, a shepherd barters a lamb for salt. Somewhere, a royal agent sharpens his blade. Silver has become more than metal. It is faith-tested, loyalty-strained, survival negotiated in whispers. The king's image remains impressed upon each coin, but his promise trembles. And in that trembling, something deeper begins to shift. For when trust cannot travel freely from hand to hand, power must find other roads, through force, through fear, through banners raised against doubt. The bells continue to ring, but their sound feels thinner now, stretched across valleys where silence answers louder than any proclamation. In the cellar, the monk seals the clay jar once more, sliding it back beneath stone. The untouched silver waits in darkness, patient as hope. Outside, night settles over the Pyrenees. And beyond the mountains, in halls where maps are unrolled and armies counted, the question grows sharper than any blade. If coin can no longer bind a kingdom together, what will? The mint smells of charcoal and sweat. Before sunrise, when the town is still wrapped in frost and rumor, the bellows begin their weary breathing. They wheeze like old men at prayer, feeding air into the furnace where silver softens into light. Molten metal glows in crucibles, white-hot, almost holy, before it is poured into narrow molds that hiss against damp stone. Steam rises in ghostly veils. The air tastes of iron and ash. Inside this vaulted chamber, authority is forged. A young apprentice named Tomas stands near the anvil block, sleeves rolled, hands blackened by soot. He is barely 17, with shoulders not yet hardened by years of labor. He watches his master lift the die, its face engraved with the king's crest. One blow. The hammer falls. The chamber rings. A second die, this one bearing the cross, is placed with practiced precision. Another blow. The sound echoes through the stone ribs of the mint like a small judgment, final and absolute. The coin is lifted, inspected, and tossed into a wooden chest where dozens of others gleam in uneasy perfection. Tomas once believed the sound of hammer on silver was the heartbeat of the kingdom. Now, he is not so certain. He has begun to notice the filings. Fine curls of silver gather beneath the striking table, shimmering like frost. At the end of each shift, they are swept up, not into the furnace for reuse, as Tomas was first told, but into a separate pouch that disappears into the master's private chest. Waste. The master mutters when Tomas lingers too long with his gaze. Loss is part of labor. But Tomas has eyes. He sees how the master's wife wears new fur lining at Advent, even as others patch old cloaks with sackcloth. He notices how their table holds capons and honeyed figs, while neighbors make do with barley porridge and thin ale. He hears the whispered thanks offered over meals too generous for a time of shortage. Silver is vanishing, grain by grain. Beyond the mint walls, fear drifts through the town like smoke that cannot find a chimney. Plague rumors travel faster than any courier. A child coughs blood in the alley behind the fishmonger's stall, red blooming against snow. The apothecary doubles his price for dried sage and vinegar, claiming scarcity. His shelves thin as quickly as trust. Fear thickens the air. In such times, the temptation to thin the coin feels almost righteous. What is a shaving of silver when death itself walks the streets? What is a fraction of value when entire families vanish between one belt hole and the next? The hidden economy does not announce itself with banners. It stitches itself into routine. The reeve collects rents in clipped pennies, knowing tenants have no recourse. They bow, hats in hand, their coins light but unavoidable. The miller demands a larger toll of flour, citing royal shortages and tapping the king's face stamped into the metal as proof. Even the parish priest hesitates before condemning fraud from the pulpit. His own stipend arrives thin. His candles burn lower each week. When coin falters, conscience begins to bargain. Tomas feels it in his bones. He feels it in the way his master's hammer strikes slightly softer some days, as if careful not to waste more than necessary. He feels it in the quiet glance exchanged when a crucible yields less than expected. The numbers do not align. The scales do not balance. At night, Tomas dreams of scales that will not settle. He stands before them, placing coin after coin onto one side, only to see the beam tilt unpredictably, as though truth itself has lost weight. He wakes with the taste of metal in his mouth, his heart pounding like the hammer he wields. One evening, as snow gathers along the eaves of the mint and muffles the world outside, Tomas lingers after the others depart. The furnace embers glow low and red. He holds a freshly struck penny in his hand, unshaved, full weight, its edge clean and sharp. The king's crest shines clearly. The cross stands firm. He hesitates. It is not theft he contemplates. It is preservation. He slips the coin into his sleeve and walks into the adjoining chapel where a single candle flickers before a wooden crucifix. The air smells of cold stone and old incense. In the base of a pillar, cracked slightly from years of settling, there is a hollow no one notices. Tomas presses the coin inside and seals it with a small wedge of mortar scraped from the wall. A fragment of honesty sealed in stone. He kneels afterward, not certain whether he has committed sin or salvation. Let it remain true, he whispers, unsure if he speaks to God or to the silver itself. Days later, word arrives that inspectors are coming from the capital. The announcement spreads like frost across glass. Trials are whispered about. Punishments described in hushed tones, hands severed for treason against the king's image, ears nailed to doors, names erased from guild rolls. The master's face grows pale. His wife no longer wears her fur to market. In the mint, the hammer strikes louder, sharper, as if noise might drown suspicion. Crucibles are measured more carefully. Filings are swept with greater haste. The pouch beneath the table grows heavier. But the greater wound has already been cut. It is not only silver that has been thinned, it is faith. When coin becomes deceit, Every handshake falters. Every oath trembles. A man promises payment, and the listener wonders what lies hidden at the edge. A father pledges a dowry, and the suitor's family weighs not only the metal, but the risk. Even alms placed in the beggar's bowl feel uncertain, as if charity itself might be counterfeit. The inspectors arrive beneath a sky the color of lead. Their cloaks are lined with official seals, their expressions carved from stone. They carry scales of their own, polished and unforgiving. Coins are tested, counted, struck against marble to hear their ring. One dull note echoes through the chamber. Silence follows. The master's hands tremble. Tomas watches from the corner, heart lodged in his throat. The inspectors do not shout. They do not rage. They simply look at the pouch of filings, then at the dies bearing the king's crest. Treason against the image, one murmurs. The words settle heavier than any sentence. Outside, townsfolk gather in tight knots, breath visible in the cold. They know what such words mean. They have seen hands removed for less. Yet as they watch the mint doors close behind the inspectors, a deeper unease spreads. Because punishment will not restore what has been lost. You can sever a hand, you can brand a forehead, you can hang a man from the gallows at dawn. But how do you mend a scale that no longer balances in the mind? That night, snow falls thick and silent over the rooftops. It covers the tracks of inspectors' boots. It softens the edges of the world. In the chapel, within the hollow pillar, the unshaved penny rests unseen. Its weight remains true. Its edge remains sharp. A single coin, hidden in stone. Above it, the mint stands quiet, its furnaces cold for the first time in years. The echo of hammer on silver lingers in memory, but it no longer sounds like authority. It sounds like something repeated too often, too hollow to reassure. In distant halls, beyond the reach of this small town, decisions are being sharpened. Taxes will be raised to refill empty coffers. Levies will be called. Armies will march, paid in coin whose ring must once again convince. But if silver has learned to lie, what of the men who carry it into battle? If the king's image can be diminished in the mint, can it not be diminished in the hearts of those who swear to defend it? The snow continues to fall. In the darkness of the chapel pillar, the honest coin waits, bright, untouched, patient as hope. And somewhere beyond these frost-bound streets, beyond the reach of soot and scales, the next test of loyalty gathers like a storm on the horizon. The morning begins with a scream. Not loud, not yet, but caught in a man's throat like a swallowed stone. Frost clings to the thatch roofs of the Saxon village as market day dawns, every blade of grass rimmed in silver that glitters like honest coin under a pale sun. Smoke rises thin and blue from hearths where women stir oat pottage with wooden spoons, the scent of wood smoke mingling with damp earth and animal dung. It should be an ordinary morning. It should be a day for barter and gossip, for the quiet rhythm of survival. But in the square, a rope is strung between two posts. Beneath it stands a pillory freshly scrubbed, the wood still dark from water, the iron hinges stiff with cold. The scent of wet oak and metal lingers in the air, sharp as accusation. The structure waits, patient and unblinking, as villagers gather in uneasy clusters, boots crunching on frost-hardened mud. They have caught a coin clipper. He is not a stranger. He marked wool bales in the autumn. He laughed at weddings. He stood godfather at a baptism last winter. His fingers are ink-stained from tallying fleeces, from pressing seals into wax. Yet hidden in his belt were shears sharp as confession, their blades thin and bright, capable of shaving the king's face into profit. The sheriff steps forward, cloak heavy with dew. He unrolls a parchment stiff with cold and reads the charge in halting Latin, the syllables stumbling over his tongue. Few understand the words. So he repeats it in the vernacular, voice louder now, for all to hear. He has diminished the king's silver, he declares, and in doing so, diminished us all. The words fall like frost, light, but covering everything. A murmur spreads through the crowd. Some shake their heads, others lower their gaze, for beneath the outrage lies something heavier. Many here have shaved a sliver themselves. A grain, a whisper of silver taken not from greed, but from need. Harvests have failed twice in 3 years. Rains drowned the wheat. Then drought cracked the soil into brittle plates. In the spring, a fever carried off the oxen, leaving fields half-plowed and men straining against wooden yokes. Yet the manor's tithe remains unchanged, as fixed as the Lord's tower on the hill. Silver thins because bread has thinned. Behind shuttered windows overlooking the square, the reeve's wife watches. She counts coins on a smooth oak table, her fingers moving confidently across edges that gleam unshaved and full. Traveling merchants from Bruges have paid in heavier pieces, solid, reassuring. These coins circulate quietly among the powerful like secret blessings. Their weight, a quiet privilege. In the cottages at the edge of the village, peasants barter eggs, cheese, and lengths of homespun cloth. They retreat from coin altogether, mistrusting what cannot be tasted or worn. A hen clucks as it changes hands. A sack of barley is weighed by eye and promise. The hidden economy no longer hides in pouches alone. It lives in gestures. A nod exchanged at dusk beside a hedgerow. A pouch slipped into a priest's sleeve after confession. A sack of barley traded without witnesses, without tally marks, without coin. It spreads like ivy along stone walls, silent, persistent, clinging to survival. The clipper stands before the pillory, wrists bound with coarse rope. His breath fogs in the cold air. He searches the faces before him, perhaps hoping to find one that will look back with mercy. Instead, he finds reflections of himself, men who know the temptation of thin silver in a thin winter. The sheriff does not shout now. His voice softens, as though authority itself feels the weight of the moment. "You stole from the king," he says. But what is a king to a man whose children cry at night? The clipper's hand is forced onto the block. The wood smells faintly of sap, newly cut, not yet seasoned. An executioner steps forward, hood drawn low. The blade glints briefly in the pale sun. The village holds its breath. The blade falls. The sound is not as loud as expected. A dull crack of steel meeting flesh and bone. Then the scream, full now, tearing through frost and smoke. Bells toll sext from the small church at the square's edge, their rhythm steady, indifferent. Children are turned away by their mothers' hands, pressed against woolen skirts. Yet they hear the cry. They will remember it. Not the words of the charge, not the Latin, the cry. Blood darkens the frost, staining silver white into something raw and human. The severed hand lies still for a moment before being lifted away. The clipper collapses, his future altered in a single stroke. He will live. That is the mercy. He will never clip again. But the greater wound is invisible. As the crowd disperses, conversations remain hushed. Some nod approval, others feel a tightening in their chests that has little to do with justice. Punishment has been delivered. Yet hunger remains. That night, frost returns. The silver moon hangs above fields stripped bare, its light spilling over stubble and broken fences. In cottages lit by rushlights, coins are weighed again, doubted again. A woman places 3 pennies on her table, testing their balance with trembling fingers. A man turns a coin over and over, running his thumb along the edge as if feeling for a scar. The punishment has not cleansed the curse. It has only revealed how deeply it runs. For the truth no one speaks aloud is this: the clipper's hand was not the only one that trembled with shears. It was merely the one caught. Under the church's low ceiling, beneath beams darkened by centuries of smoke, the priest kneels alone before the altar. He removes a loose stone from the floor. Careful, reverent. Beneath it lies a small hoard of untouched silver, coins heavy, edges sharp, faces unmarred. He does not touch them tonight. They lie there as relics of another time, silent witnesses to a village slowly forgetting what true weight once felt like. Their brightness contrasts with the thin pieces circulating in the square. They are memory-made metal. Outside, the Reeves house remains lit longer than the others. Somewhere beyond the hills, merchants count heavier coin. And far away, in halls where decisions are made by men who will never see this frost or hear this scream, levies are being calculated. Taxes sharpened, demands prepared. Because when silver thins at the edges of a kingdom, power does not retreat. It presses harder. In the stillness before sleep, the village settles into uneasy dreams. The clipper lies fevered, his bandaged arm throbbing in time with his heartbeat. A child whispers a prayer for bread. A woman hides 2 coins beneath her mattress, unsure whether to trust them or fear them. And under the altar, the untouched hoard waits in darkness, patient and silent. The bells will ring again tomorrow. The market will open. Silver will change hands. But something has shifted beneath the surface, something colder than frost. If a man can lose his hand for thinning the king's image, what will happen when entire villages begin to doubt it? The moon drifts behind a cloud. The square falls into shadow. And somewhere beyond these fields, beyond the quiet tolling of small church bells, forces are gathering that will test not just the weight of coin, but the weight of loyalty itself. The river smells of silt and decay. At dawn, when the world has not yet chosen between light and shadow, a barge drifts beneath a stone bridge carved with saints whose faces have long since eroded into blank expressions. Rain and centuries have softened their eyes. Moss grows in the hollows where halos once shone sharp. Dawn mist clings low over the water, turning the river into a pale shroud that swallows sound. From the deck, a merchant stands with gloved hands resting on an iron-bound chest. The wood is darkened by years of spray and salt. Inside, coins shift with the movement of the current, clattering softly against one another. The sound is wrong. Too dull. Too light. It rattles like bones hollowed by illness. He closes his eyes and listens again. Once, this river carried certainty. Wool for salt. Timber for iron nails forged in monastery workshops that smelled of incense and hot metal. Barges heavy with grain would scrape against the quay, and silver would change hands with a ring clear enough to cut through gull cries and dockside shouting. Now the sound is muffled. The merchant remembers the first time he heard it. This thin, embarrassed clink. He had been in Elbeck, beneath red brick gables and banners snapping in Baltic wind. A Hanseatic trader weighed English groats beside Baltic marks. His brow furrowed. He muttered in low German about debasement, about edges shaved too fine to see at a glance. Discounted for weakness, the man had written in his ledger, the ink pressed so hard it tore the parchment. Accepted at loss. Loss. The word has followed the merchant ever since. In Bruges, where canals mirror tall houses and warehouses smell of wool grease and beeswax, the story is the same. Coins are weighed not once, but twice, sometimes thrice. They are struck against marble slabs to hear their ring. A dull note spreads suspicion faster than rumor. Traders lower their voices. Ledgers grow crowded with annotations, caution creeping between numbers like mold between stones. Markets no longer trust the king's silver. The merchant leans over the chest and lifts the lid. Inside, cloth sacks are neatly stacked, tied with waxed cord. He unties one and pours a handful of local pennies into his palm. Their faces bear the king's crest, the cross stamped firm. Yet the edges feel faintly uneven, their weight almost apologetic. Beneath these sacks lies another layer, hidden beneath coarse wool and salted fish. Foreign coins. Florentine florins stamped with lilies. Venetian ducats glowing bright as sunrise. Baltic marks thick and steady. They move quietly between trusted hands. They are never displayed openly. They are counted in back rooms, scented with dried herring and candle smoke. Guild elders hoard them in oak chests lined with linen, their fingers reverent as if touching relics. Apprentices, meanwhile, are paid in brittle, shaved pennies. Their wages feel thin even before they are spent. A hidden current runs beneath the visible trade routes. On the docks, men shout over barrels of tar and sacks of rye. Above deck, sails snap and ropes groan. Below deck, in dim compartments smelling of brine and fear, pouches are exchanged without witnesses. A nod at dusk. A handshake that lasts a heartbeat longer than needed. This is not merely trade in foreign silver, it is trade in survival. The curse reaches inland. In a market square far from the river, a cooper refuses coin and demands payment in salted pork. Meat does not thin, he says, voice rough as the staves he shapes. A widow trading flax thread is offered half her due because the silver ring's false. She argues until her voice breaks, her hands trembling as she weighs the coin against the hunger waiting at home. Arguments bloom in marketplaces like bruises, dark, spreading, difficult to ignore. Suspicion settles between neighbors who once trusted each other's word more than any minted crest. Meanwhile, royal decrees insist the coin remain sound. Heralds stand in cathedral squares, cloaks heavy with embroidered lions. They unroll parchment sealed in bright wax and read proclamations in clear, practiced voices. The king's silver is strong, they declare. Its value stands unbroken. Their words echo off limestone walls and vaulted arches, but the echo feels emptier than before. In the merchant's cabin, lantern light flickers against wooden beams scarred by years of river travel. He sits alone and opens his chest again. Outside, gulls cry and ropes strain against cleats. The tide pulls steadily toward the sea. He lifts a Florentine coin first. It rests in his palm like a promise kept. Heavy. Pure. Its edges crisp, its face unmarred. He turns it slowly, watching the lily catch the light. This coin does not apologize for its weight. Then he lifts a local penny, thin as parchment. Its ring, when tapped against the table, is soft and uncertain. He stares at the king's face, pressed into its surface, and feels a tightening in his chest. It is not only metal that has been diminished. It is authority. It is faith. He understands then that the hidden economy is not merely about profit. It is about endurance. Those with access to purity, those who can trade in florins and ducats behind closed doors, will endure the storm. Those who cannot will sink quietly, unnoticed, like stones dropped into deep water. The river carries both honest cargo and secret wealth indistinguishable in the fog. Barges pass beneath the bridge, where saints stand faceless and patient. Their eroded eyes seem to watch without judgment. The mist thickens, swallowing the outlines of warehouses and spires. From the deck, the merchant can no longer see the shore clearly. Only the faint silhouette of the sea ahead, vast and indifferent. He thinks of the villages upriver where coins are weighed by candlelight, of the mint where apprentices listen for the ring of truth, of the pillory in a frost-bound square, all of it connected by this water, by this quiet current carrying more than goods. Metal has become a measure not only of value, but of fate. If foreign silver becomes the standard of trust, what becomes of the king's face stamped into thinning coin? If merchants place their faith in lilies and winged lions, where does loyalty bend? The barge slips closer to the mouth of the river. The scent of salt grows stronger, sharper. The sea waits beyond, restless and wide. Ships anchored in the harbor rock gently, their hulls heavy with cargo and secrets. The merchant closes the chest with deliberate care. The iron straps groan softly as the lid settles. He fastens the lock, though he knows no lock can secure what is already unraveling. Above him, gulls wheel and cry, their voices cutting through mist like unanswered questions. The bridge fades behind him, its saints swallowed by white. Somewhere beyond the horizon, new alliances are forming, treaties negotiated in rooms where foreign coin speaks louder than oaths. And somewhere inland, where proclamations still echo against cathedral stone, the crown insists that nothing has changed. But the river knows. It carries what is honest and what is hidden without distinction. It remembers every coin dropped into its depths, every secret trade made in shadow. As the barge reaches open water, the merchant feels the subtle shift beneath his feet, the pull of the tide stronger now, less forgiving. If silver determines survival, then survival will determine loyalty. And as the mist lifts slowly from the river, revealing the vast, uncertain sea, a question lingers heavier than any coin in his chest. When the measure of value drifts beyond the king's grasp, how long before power follows? The abbey garden lies silent beneath autumn leaves. They drift down in slow spirals, settling against cloister stones worn smooth by centuries of prayer. Their edges curl like brittle parchment, brown and gold against earth already stiff with approaching frost. The air smells of damp soil and distant wood smoke. Somewhere beyond the walls, a raven calls once and then is still. A novice kneels beside a stone bench in the fading light, a horn lantern flickering beside him. Its glow is thin, trembling against the wind that slips through archways and sighs along the cloister walk. He copies psalms onto vellum, his breath clouding before him. Ink thickens at the tip of his quill, freezing slightly before it meets the page. He pauses, rubbing his fingers together for warmth, whispering the words as he writes them. Put not your trust in princes. The words feel heavier this year. Inside the abbey's storerooms, beneath beams darkened by time, the cellarer counts coins meant for winter grain. His hands are steady, but his eyes are not. Silver pieces slide through his fingers, their edges cool and uncertain. The faint clink echoes against stone walls that once seemed immune to the world's decay. The monastery had always stood apart. Its wealth did not flow from markets or merchant bargains. It came in tithe sheaves, stacked in barns, in candle wax molded by patient hands, in wool shorn from tenant flocks, and salted fish lifted from river traps. Offerings given not for profit, but for salvation. Metal passed across the altar as devotion, not negotiation. But famine presses against the gates now. The granary smells emptier than it should. Alms bowls grow heavier with pleas than with bread. Villagers come barefoot through fallen leaves, their faces hollowed by hunger. They kneel before the abbey doors and ask not for forgiveness, but for flour. The cellarer feels their eyes on him even when he is alone. After Compline, when the bells have fallen silent and the monks retreat to narrow cells, traveling traders approach quietly. Their cloaks are dark, their boots soft against gravel. They bring grain in covered wagons and speak in low voices beneath the arch of the gatehouse. Barley, one says, lifting a sack to reveal pale kernels within. But at adjusted weight, the word adjusted lingers like smoke. The cellarer hesitates. Usury is sin. Debasement is sin. The abbey's own manuscripts condemn kings who thinned their coin and were struck down by divine wrath. In the scriptorium, illuminated letters glow with warnings from another age. Yet starving villagers are also sin. Are they not? He weighs hunger against doctrine. He feels the pull of both. In the scriptorium, candles gutter in iron stands. Manuscripts lie open, their margins crowded with saints and serpents. The novice copies tales of rulers who debased coin and lost their crowns. His voice murmurs the Latin softly, the words weaving through stone halls like incense. Outside those halls, reality is murkier. The abbey accepts thinner silver to secure barley shipments. The cellarer presses coins into a trader's hand, knowing they do not carry full weight. In doing so, he legitimizes what he once condemned. The act feels small, practical, necessary. And yet something shifts. Soon, peasants begin bringing offerings in kind rather than coin, bundles of turnips tied with rough twine, clay jars of honey sealed with wax, a chicken cradled against a child's chest. They no longer trust stamped metal to carry grace. They trust soil, bees, feathers. The hidden economy within these walls is not profit, it is compromise. Sacred vows bend under material weight. The abbey's authority rests not only on prayer, but on provision. And provision now requires negotiation with a world it once held at arm's length. One evening, as bells toll for vespers and the sky burns briefly with the red of a dying sun, the novice hears raised voices from the chapter house. The sound is sharp against the usual hush. He pauses in the cloister, heart tightening. An audit has come from the bishopric. Two clerks in dark robes sit at the long oak table, parchment spread before them like accusations. They ask about coin purity, about reserves, about payments made at adjusted weight. Their quills scratch rapidly as the cellarer answers, his voice low and careful. Necessity, he says once. The word tastes thin. The abbey's walls feel closer that night. The wind presses harder against shutters. In the orchard beyond the cloister, apples fall with soft thuds into damp grass. The novice cannot sleep. He rises from his narrow bed and walks beneath the archway into the garden. The lantern in his hand casts trembling shadows along the path. The air bites at his cheeks. Frost glitters faintly on fallen leaves. He carries a small pouch. Inside are coins of proper weight. Silver that rings clear when struck against stone. He has seen too many thin pieces pass across the cellarer's table. He has heard too many whispered negotiations after dark. He does not know whether he acts in defiance or devotion. He kneels beside the oldest apple tree, its roots thick and gnarled like arthritic fingers gripping the earth. With numb hands, he digs a shallow hollow beneath them. The soil is cold and stubborn. He places the pouch within and covers it carefully, pressing earth back into place. Not stolen, saved. Silver of honest weight preserved against further thinning. A fragment of certainty buried in uncertain ground. He rests his palm briefly against the tree's trunk. Above him, branches creak softly in the wind. He whispers no prayer this time, only breath. Winter will come soon. Frost will seal the earth, locking the pouch beneath orchard soil. Snow will settle along cloister roofs and muffle the bells. The granary will thin again. The bishop's clerks will carry their reports back across frozen roads. Above ground, faith trembles on a scale that no longer balances cleanly between doctrine and survival. The abbey stands between hunger and law, between purity and pragmatism. In the chapel, candles flicker before relics housed in gold and crystal. Pilgrims still kneel. Psalms are still sung. Yet beneath the altar stones and orchard roots alike, silver lies hidden, silent testimony to a truth no proclamation can erase. Metal has become more than currency. It has become conscience. As the novice returns to his cell, frost creeping along the cloister stones, he feels the quiet weight of what he has done. He has preserved a fragment of honesty, but honesty alone cannot fill empty bowls. Beyond the abbey walls, villages grow restless. Merchants whisper of foreign coin. Royal auditors sharpen their quills. Hunger does not wait for theological clarity. The bells ring again before dawn, thin and clear in the freezing air. And beneath the orchard, honest silver sleeps, while above it, a kingdom edges closer to a reckoning where not only coin, but conviction itself will be tested in the cold light of survival. Snow falls softly upon the capital, each flake descending without sound, cloaking towers and chimneys in white surrender. Hoofbeats along the royal road are muffled into dull thuds. Even the river that cuts through the city moves more slowly, its edges crusted with ice like old scars, sealed but not healed. Inside the treasury hall, warmth fights the cold in restless waves. Torches spit resin against stone walls painted with faded victories, battles frozen in pigment where kings once rode unbroken into glory. The colors have dulled with time. Crimson is browned. Gold has tarnished. Beneath those painted triumphs, clerks bend over ledgers stitched with red thread, their fingers stained black with ink, their brows furrowed over numbers that refuse mercy. Quills scratch like restless insects. Columns of figures stretch downward, each some a reminder that war has eaten what harvest once replenished. Fortifications demand stone, timber, iron. Mercenaries demand coin, not promises. Deficits grow like cracks in winter ice, thin at first, then widening with silent inevitability. At the far end of the hall, beneath a canopy embroidered with lions mid-roar, the king sits alone for a moment before his council gathers. The lion's threads glimmer in torchlight, fierce and unyielding. Before him rests a silver tray of newly struck coins, bright, flawless to the eye. They gleam as though untouched by doubt. He lifts one. Its surface is smooth, its crest sharp. To the casual hand, it would feel sufficient. But he knows its secret. Less silver. More alloy. A whisper of copper folded into what was once pure. It is a compromise cast into metal. War has drained the coffers. Riders have carried banners across borders. Steel has clashed under foreign suns. Each victory demanded payment in advance, each defeat paid for twice. The treasury once echoed with weight. Now it echoes with arithmetic. His council enters quietly, cloaks shedding snow upon polished stone. They speak in hushed tones as if fear might overhear them. Temporary, one insists, fingers tapping nervously against the table. Necessary. The people will not notice. The king says nothing. Outside the palace gates, the people already have. In the market square below the castle walls, women selling onions and dried fish test coins against their teeth. The faint give of alloy betrays what proclamations deny. Goldsmiths charge extra to melt them, claiming impurities, waste charcoal, and time. Foreign envoys from across the sea refuse tribute in local silver, demanding heavier currency that rings clear. Trust has thinned faster than metal. The hidden economy here is not born in taverns or orchards. It is born at the top. Courtiers are quietly paid in foreign florins to secure loyalty. Their purses grow heavier even as public coin grows lighter. Tax collectors skim the truest pieces before forwarding the rest to the treasury, convincing themselves it is compensation for risk. Nobles store full-weight silver in hidden vaults beneath manor chapels, where candles flicker before saints who do not speak. Within the palace, loyalty is measured not in vows, but in weight. Beyond its walls, consequences gather. In a narrow street shadowed by overhanging timber, a cobbler closes his shop early. Snow gathers along the sill of his small window. Fewer customers come now. Leather scraps pile unused, curling at the edges like autumn leaves. He sits by the hearth and empties a small wooden box onto the table. His daughter's dowry. Coin by coin, he had assembled it over years, mending boots, patching saddles, stitching soles by lamplight. Each piece once felt solid, certain. Now he runs a thumb over their edges and feels faint ridges where silver has been shaved. He taps one against the table. The ring is softer than he remembers. He does not curse the king. He does not curse the war. He only stares at the diminishing stack and calculates the distance between hope and reality. The king believes he controls the metal. He believes that by adjusting alloy, by striking brighter surfaces, he can command perception. But he does not see how the metal controls the realm. For when currency falters, trust fractures. When trust fractures, allegiance thins. In the treasury hall, debates stretch into evening. Torches burn lower. Wax drips onto ledgers like slow tears. One advisor speaks of raising taxes. Another suggests seizing foreign coin. A third warns of unrest if burdens grow heavier. The king listens, silent as falling snow. Later that night, alone in his chamber, he dismisses attendants and stands before a single candle. The chamber is vast, but it feels narrow. He lifts one of the new coins and holds it to the flame. Light flickers across its surface, revealing a subtle dullness beneath its shine. The alloy does not glow as true silver does. It absorbs light differently, as though reluctant to reflect it honestly. He presses the coin flat against the oak table and lets it fall. The sound is hollow. It echoes softly in the chamber, absorbed by tapestries and heavy curtains. But in that small, dull note, he hears something larger. The erosion of certainty, the quiet shifting of allegiance. Outside, snow continues to fall. It covers rooftops and roads alike, disguising difference. Rich and poor wake to the same white silence. The palace and the cobbler's shop look equally softened beneath winter's hand. But beneath the snow, the realm shifts. Merchants count foreign coin in secret. Nobles reinforce manor walls. Peasants barter in kind. Priests weigh doctrine against hunger. Every transaction carries a shadow. Every oath feels slightly lighter. The curse was never superstition. It was arithmetic. Subtract a grain of silver from a coin. Subtract trust from a promise. Subtract faith from authority. The equation resolves the same. In the quiet between one coin's strike and the next, between one council debate and another, the kingdom begins to reckon with the cost of its own hidden economy. It is not only coffers that have emptied, it is the space between ruler and ruled. The king sets the coin down and looks toward the window where snow presses against glass. He cannot see the city clearly, only its outline blurred by frost. Somewhere beyond those walls, men and women weigh metal by candlelight. Somewhere, a dowry shrinks. Somewhere, a merchant chooses a foreign florin over his sovereign's face. He closes his hand around the coin once more, feeling its diminished weight. If metal can be altered to sustain power, can power survive what the alteration reveals? The candle sputters, then steadies. Outside, beneath the white hush of winter, decisions are forming. Among nobles, among merchants, among commoners whose patience thins like silver at the edge. The snow hides division for now. But when it melts, what will surface? In the silence between hammer and ring, between decree and doubt, a kingdom waits. And the next sound it hears may not be the strike of coin, but the crack of something far less easily reforged.